without further ado, I'm going to bring out the star of the hour, the director of Black Panther, Ryan Coogler. Thank you. So we're slowly coming back to earth after seeing the film. I mean, you know, when I try to describe what's special about all of your films, you know, from Fruitvale Station and Creed onto Black Panther, I kind of always come back to a single word, and that's heart. I just feel like you bring real heart to all of these films, and that's really hard to do with a film on the scale of Black Panther. And I feel like part of it, you know, you see a lot of movies that are about the end of the world or the end of a world, but you don't always feel like there's anything at stake that's kind of boring. But this is a movie where you feel something at stake, and I think a lot of that is just the detail of the craft of the filmmaking. And I've got the sense that everything from the costume design, production design, the music, like that you kind of didn't rest until that was like fully and richly accomplished. So you must have worked really closely and had a good team in all of these departments.
Yeah, we had a great team. And if filmmaking is, you know, it is kind of a team sport. You know, it's not like other art forms that are a little more, you know, that are a little more singular. You know, to make a film, you need, even when you make it on a small scale, you know, you still need hundreds of people. You know, and this film was done on a pretty massive scale. You know. So when going out to department heads, that was something that you know, I wanted to keep in mind, to try to get the very best people possible and people who really have skin in the game, so to speak. You know, like in the story, have emotional ties and connections to the material. You know, we were able to get some incredible collaborators on this film, and they really kind of took ownership over it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you know, especially with just the look of the film. That's Hannah Beachler in production design, and you must have done a lot of research, because there's a real just like deep cultural grounding to it. So it doesn't feel like just a made-up world. It's an interesting combination of research and kind of, you know, imagination.
Yeah, it was something that we all committed to. We wanted Wakanda to feel like a place, even. Oh, excuse me.
Sorry. I guess they're a little hot.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, even though it doesn't, you know, it doesn't exist in the real world, we wanted to feel that way. You know, we wanted to feel like at the end of the film, you know, if audiences liked the movie, we wanted them to feel like they could buy a ticket and go to the place. You know, and that was something that was important to all of us. You know, at the time of taking the job, I hadn't been to the continent yet, and I kind of knew that to make this film, I would have to go and spend some time there. And I believe, you know, Hannah Beachler, who was our production designer, hadn't been yet. You know, so that was another thing a trip that she had to take and to spend time there on the continent. We were able to bring on my co-writer, Joe Robert Cole, who was amazing, and Ruth Carter, who's our costume designer, was amazing.
She's terrific. Yeah.
Jeff Bauman, who oversaw our visual effects. You know, it was just a really great team, and everybody was kind of committed to trying to make Wakanda as tactile a place as possible. You know, we wanted it to feel of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. You know, what's it like when you are pitching a conception of a film where it's part of this, you know, universe, and there's a very particular. I'm sure there's a lot of care that's taken with handling these things, and so I mean, you must have had a pitch that was very detailed and from the outset.
It actually wasn't. Like when I first came in, you know, Marvel was already they were already going to make this movie, you know, and they were looking for a filmmaker, you know, and I came in and met with them, and I kind of, you know, heard from them what they were looking for in the project, and all I really had at that time was, you know, a kind of narrative lens that I wanted to look at the film through, which is this lens of identity, you know what I mean, an African identity, as it relates to the identity of Africans who are you know, born and raised on the continent versus those that are raised in the diaspora, you know, and the effects of colonization. And if that was something that Wakanda was able to escape, you know, what's the conflict there with people who didn't, you know? So that was kind of the narrative attack that I had in my mind. I was able to pitch to them, and they were into that. So then we developed all of our looks around that. So when we brought Hannah on, We brought Rachel Morrison on as our cinematographer.
Yeah,
and Ruth on. We kind of would zero in around those things, and then around the characters and around the script, but really try to find ways to tell an African story.
Yeah, and I think you bring it to life so well as well. There's a lot of momentum to the film, and so that it's not just that we're looking at this beautifully designed world. It just sits there, like we move through it, and from the beginning, even that opening sequence, which I think is so beautiful, explaining the backstory.
Right.
I mean that's just a great way to start the film, isn't it?
Yeah, but it wasn't something that we always knew we were gonna do. It was something that we had written, but in a lot of cuts, like some really advanced cuts, it wasn't in there. And then we were in post, with our editors Michael Shaver and Debbie Berman, and that was when we realized, man, actually we probably need to go back to that and find a cool way to put that in. So we developed it, and then it came to the situation of like who's talking, who's doing this narration, and it was later down the line when we realized it would be best for the character played by Sterling K. Brown and Jobu to kind of be telling the story to the young Killmonger.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to get into it. It is, and very tactile, as you were saying. And of course, in addition to having this fully realized world, it's also there's a lot of action in it, and anyone who has seen Fruitvale Station knows that your way around the camera and the actual like lived experience of like moving and motion, and I think that's in every other frame of this film. There's often a lot of pressure on keeping things moving, and I wonder what was your approach to like shooting action sequences? You have some great set pieces in here. The car chase, where the extra perfect detail for me is the particular track that you put on it. Like that just runs it. I mean, how did you kind of what was your plan of attack for the action?
I think it goes back to hiring the right people. We hired some amazing stunt coordinators. And Andy Gill and JoJo, and I think it's JoJo's Jonathan and Subio, I should say his full name. Okay. But in Jonathan and Andy, we hired some great stunt coordinators. I got to work with my buddy Clayton as well, who I worked with on Creed. He was a part of their team as well, and hiring those guys and kind of getting them in on what the story is, who the characters are, and then developing the set pieces around those things. So you always have like the story. And the characters as your North Star, and then you try to find ways to do unique things. Finding the locations was also a big thing. Like, Marvel wanted, his character to feel like they're James Bond, and in James Bond movies, the locations play such a deep part in it. Yeah, like it's funny because I was talking with my buddy. Talking with my buddy Kerry Fukunaga, who's making the next Bond, and that's kind of like the first question that you ask. It's like, yo, where are you guys going? Like on this Bond, like what are the locations going to be? And then you can kind of think about the set pieces around that. For us, finding Busan in South Korea, was a big deal. And then once we found it and we saw it and we narrowed in on where the car chase was going to be, then we kind of let those things coupled with who the characters are. In this case is the case of Shuri and T'Challa and Nakia and Okoye. Like how can we reveal character, through this action, and also the character of Claw. So all of that action is built around like, who's in the car, who's outside of the car, who's doing what in those scenes, and how the interactions are going between them,
Yeah, and I mean, and the cast, of course, is just terrific. Each of them, I think, brings a really particular bearing to their character and a really particular kind of pace to it. So Chadwick Boseman is just a very regal kind of figure, and Letitia Wright was more mischievous. You constantly have all these like different energies coming together, and so it must have been very satisfying seeing the cast kind of work together like that.
Yeah, it was great, and really like thinking about the characters, kind of lining them up, we really tried to play with this idea of traditionalists versus innovators, and when you see pairings in the film, we usually try to pair somebody who was on a different side of that divide, Yeah. So you see T'Challa in the car with, he's traveling with Shuri, so there's a banner there, and then the same thing with Lupita and Danai's character, it's a little bit of a banter there, in those differences of opinions.
Yeah, definitely. I want to get some questions from the audience in just a second, but I just wanted to go back a bit because this is all about art houses, and we're showing this in art houses across the nation. And I know that when you were starting out, going to art houses and seeing movies, kind of a part of your routine. That was. Do you remember what particular movies you saw or that were influences at all? Or
Oh wow, yeah, for sure. I grew up in the Bay Area, so we had a lot of multiplexes that were close by to where I lived. But then as I got older, we would find the art house theaters as well. The Grand Lake Theater was one we would hit a lot, which is kind of like somewhere in between. They play a lot of local art house films, but also a lot of blockbusters as well. But I remember going to see movies that I would hear about as I got older and realized that I wanted to be a filmmaker, and they would be in really obscure releases, like that. So I have to drive around to go, to go find the theaters.
Yeah, when you have to kind of drive a long distance.
Yeah, one of my wife and I's fondest memories was like trying to find Brick, the old Ryan Johnson movie.
Yeah.
We kind of had to find that one. I can't remember what city we ended up in. watching
3 hours.
Yeah,
to
watching
see
the
a
screen.
2-hour movie.
Yeah, watching the screen of Brick. But no, yeah, I came up in art house movies, especially art house theaters, I should say, especially when I was in film school at USC. Spent a lot of time in them there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's get some questions from the audience here, and then we have questions that we've gotten from Twitter. Don't worry, there are no questions about the sequel, so
Okay.
Don't worry about that. Anyone wants to ask any questions? Let's see. You can raise your hand. Sorry, over there in the back. If you could just wait in the back for the mic. Thanks.
Hey, hello. Congratulations. This movie's awesome.
Oh, thanks, bro.
So you've done a low budget, a mid budget, and now a super big budget. I was wondering what are your experiences on all of them, which is your favorite and why, et cetera, et cetera.
Small question.
Yeah. You talking about working at different budget levels? I mean, I was fortunate that when I was working on the movies, I wasn't thinking about the budget. You know what I mean? It was just a story that was driving me with each one, and I was fortunate that the budgets were right for each one that I was working on. But that's not something that I've ever had to really think about. Like, it's like I mean, the truth of it is, like, when I was making Fruitvale, that was the movie that I wanted to make more than anything else. Somebody could have came up to me and said, that was 2012 then. Somebody could have came up to me and said, hey, do you want to make a Black Panther movie right now? And I would have been like, get out of my face. I'm trying to make this movie, And that's just the honest, the honest truth. My mind wasn't on that. I was kind of obsessed with that subject matter. And the same thing for when I got the opportunity to make Creed. That was a story that I came up with, before I even rolled cameras on Fruitvale. And it was something about, inspired by my relationship with my dad. Rocky was his favorite movie. So I wanted to make that film. And then when I went to Stallone and I went to MGM, it was kind of, the budget was an afterthought. You know what I mean? I just wanted them to say, yes, you can make this, and then went from there. At the end of 2015, 2016, when I had that first meeting on Black Panther, my mind was on that, and we made it for the right amount of money. So for me, it's always story focused. It's the film that feels right to me at the time, and the budget tends to usually take care of itself. And that's been my experience.
I just want to follow up to that. I mean, one thing that's great is that even when you're working with like a big budget film as this, you're still able to do these wonderful small little gestures of filmmaking and reverse shot things that express so much. I mean, when they go to the astral plane, there's this great reverse shot with Michael Jordan where they show him shot to his father and cut back to him and he's a child, and that just says so much in just that little sequence.
No, for sure, and like to add to that, like what I've learned with each one, none of the lessons have become like forgotten. You know what I mean? Like I'm still using lessons that I learned on that under $1 million movie I did 5-6 years ago when I'm on the the $200 million movie set. You know what I mean? Like you still bring it with you. And I work with the same cinematographer on Panther as I did on Fruitvale. So it'll be times on set when it was like, you remember on Fruitvale when we did this thing, we can do that, here.
That's great.
So which makes it a lot easier,
Yeah, definitely. Question here.
Thank you. This is the first time I saw the film. I don't think the adjective to describe it has been invented yet.
Oh, man.
But my question is, this is such an enormous undertaking. Can you just share with us what were your like 2 or 3 biggest challenges?
Okay. Yeah, 2 or 3 biggest challenges for this. I would say the biggest challenge was just stamina.
Yeah, keeping it going.
Yeah,
just,
always mismatch the M and the N on that word. Yeah, but stamina, I would say, just the amount of time that you're working on a project of this size, and the rate at which you're working on it. You know, like every day is hard. You know, every day is a minimum, 14 and 16 hours. You know, and it just keeps coming at you until until you're done. You know, and you don't really have an understanding for what that's like until you do it. You know what I mean? Like somebody could tell you, yo, this movie's gonna be hard, but until you're in the middle of it, you don't really get how hard, and how I can kind of uproot your life. You know what I mean? So that was the biggest challenge, and I would say that the second biggest challenge was, being able to articulate ideas fast and on the spot and in front of a lot of people. This process was a lot of that pretty much every day, and start to finish. You know what I mean? Like in pre-production, production, and even in post-production. You'll find yourself in situations where it's 20, 30 professionals. You know what I mean? Some of which have been doing it for longer than you've been alive. In my case, they're looking at you for direction. And you got to come up with it right there on the spot, or you wasting their time. And it has to be good. You know what I mean? And so that was another adjustment. And I would say the third one was just working with the third biggest challenge was just working with this many actors. We would have scenes where it would be, you got Michael, you got Chadwick, you got Danai, you got Letitia, you got Daniel, you got all of the elders, and everybody is in the scene. You know what I mean? Everybody's gonna have coverage that day. And you want to feel like everybody has your support. If they have a question, or if they need time, or if they need another take, but it's only so many hours in a day. So dealing with a cast of that size and of that stature was challenging at times as well.
Yeah, you never really feel anyone's getting shortchanged. Everyone's kind of able to put themselves out there. It's really great. Here in the front.
Hi, I find the Killmonger character for me is such a complex character, and I don't think I've ever felt so much empathy for a quote-unquote bad guy. So I was wondering, was he scripted that way? Was he tweaked along the way? Just wanted to get some insight.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I would say like the all of the characters were being worked on, up until the last moment that they ripped the film out of our hands and had to ship it, all over the world. Killmonger, I would say he and T'Challa's, both were really complex. We started with the right base. But we wanted them to both be kind of like the opposite sides of a coin. What happens with somebody who has all the support that you could imagine, you know what I mean? And what happens to that same person if they have none of it, and that was kind of what we were playing with there, So, and then we got incredible actors, you know what I mean? You got what you write on you got what Joe and I wrote on the page, and then when Michael B. Jordan comes and says it, or when Chadwick Boseman comes and says it, it becomes different, and we would improv on set with them, with their character backstories. We would find lines that maybe weren't written, but convey what we were going for stronger, and more realistically, So it was a work in progress the whole time. But I would say the bones of the character and what he was supposed to represent, was there pretty early.
Yeah, I mean that character. It's also kind of an interesting character. Just thinking of him as like a political leader, who's doing whatever it takes and does whatever he wants, and there's no limits, and that's frightening. Yeah. Just describing a character in a movie. In the back there. If you just wait for the mic, please.
Yeah, Ryan, I just got a couple of questions. but the first one is the script and what you had to say, especially with the Killmonger. I mean, how did a conservative Walt Disney get past that? I mean, I want to know how you convinced them. That's the first thing. And the second thing, I know you being a young director, this is your third time, and you got this tremendous talent on the set, actors, Forrest Whitaker. Did you ever have to, did they ever question you about certain things that you have to kind of pull them aside and talk, or that you have to express yourself in front of everybody? So I kind of want to know those two stories.
Yeah, the first one, the truth is that that Disney was completely supportive of the film in the script stage, and when we showed them the cut, it was never any pushback there. That's not like a sexy story, but it really is the truth. And I frankly was surprised. Before I got to know them, I was surprised. After getting to know them, I'm not. And I was thankful that they were supportive. And that it started with Marvel. And then as it got up the chain to big Disney, they were supportive. They wanted more. They wanted more of it. To be honest, and I think that's kind of what sets them apart, probably from other places. I would also say that, like, for the second question, like when you're having conversations with actors, you want it to be as you want to give them as much privacy as necessary. So I try to do that. You know what I mean? If they want to pull me to the side or for something, I'll always give them that ability. That's probably my most important job on set is to support them and make sure that they feel like I've got their back so that they can give everything they have to give in front of the camera. So I'm always you have to do that a lot on a film like this. Especially with some of our actors and actresses that have heritage directly of the continent. You know what I mean? Like with Lupita and Danai. They would sometimes they'll say, Ryan, I'm not sure if this is right. And we'll go off to the side and get it right. You know what I mean? And even if it takes 5-10 minutes, even if it takes an hour, and then come back. And that was one of the blessings of having them. But yeah, it would be times like that for sure. Especially with Forrest, man. I mean, I started my career with Forrest. I was in film school and he was like, "Hey, let's make a movie." So to have him on set, in costume, it was overwhelming at times. You better believe if he was like, "Ryan, I gotta talk to you about something." You know what I mean? I made time.
You listen. Yeah. Okay, I want to just give a chance to some of the questions that have come in from Twitter that we've been selecting. All right, so this is a question from Gabby. As a result of Black Panther's impact and significance, how did you respond to the film being a needed catalyst for more genuinely diverse representation, not just for Black people, but for people of color who are poorly represented by the media?
That's an intense question.
Yeah.
Could you read it again? I'm
Sure.
sorry.
Yeah. It's how do you respond to the film that the film's such a catalyst for genuinely diverse representation, not just for Black people, but for all people of color. In terms of representation in the media, the representation is not always good. So this movie just is huge, and especially since it's been so successful, it shows something else there too.
Yeah, it's hard for me to talk about it like in retrospect. I can think of it. I can answer that question in terms of like when we got the opportunity to make it, and we knew it was an opportunity to do some of the things that she's is a woman.
Gabby, I think.
Yeah, that Gabby's talking about there. We knew it was an opportunity to have some well-rounded portrayal of characters of African descent. We knew it was a chance to celebrate African culture, in all of its differences. Whether it's the culture of the continent, whether it's the culture of the diaspora. We knew it was a chance to show some incredible characters that happen to be female,
Oh yeah,
so all of that, none of that stuff was lost on us as far as the opportunity, and we kind of let that motivate us to work really, really hard, as far as all of that, everything else that Gabby's talking about, like what it means for the industry, or it's hard for me to look at that, and assess that. I think that you need more time and more distance from it.
Yeah, I mean, just from my little position as a critic, it feels like a real landmark. It's really a special event. Okay, here's another question from Bay of All Tours is the handle. It's a good question. Did you go back to any of the comic books for visual reference when it came to like drawing up shots and shot lists and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Do tell.
No, we did. Like, we would like if you man, it's funny because filmmaking is such like a, you kind of like gypsies. You almost like a circus. Like you set up a production office, and then you tear it down, and then you set up a post-production office, and then you tear it down, and somebody else is there. But if I could go back in time and put our production office back up or our post-production office back up, you would see just panels from different comic books taped to the walls, all over the place. It was a real interesting story about that too. A friend of mine, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who writes the Panther comics at the time. We had so many panels of his stuff all over the walls, and he came to visit us in like the post-production office one day. So he just, nobody was really in the office, and he just went around with a Sharpie, and he just signed like every picture he could find. and the next day, people came back in and just went nuts. Like everybody was framing, they were tearing their stuff off so they could go frame it. But we had to work around us all the time to find inspiration.
That's really great. I mean, are there any particular like sequences that come to mind that were from the comics or?
I mean, yeah, so many of them, man. Like it was a big it was a scene with Panther and a rhino in the McGregor run.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
The RTF flying into Wakanda. If you look at Black Panther number, I'm not sure what number it was, but Ta-Nehisi's first run with Stealth Freeze, is seeing you see that ship and how unique it is in the skyline of the city. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of great runs, man, where we pull stuff from. But those two come to mind. Oh man, the McGregor run when Killmonger throws T'Challa off of the cliff at Warrior Falls. That was one of the first panels that they turned sideways and made it the long way. Like when you picked him up overhead. Yeah. So, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's terrific. This is a question from Javi. Let's see. This might be a little similar to the question we got from the audience. What are some things that you learned working on your previous films that helped you in the production of Black Panther? I mean, you mentioned some of that in terms of Fruitvale Station. Maybe in terms of Creed, it might be interesting. Like what? Because obviously they're a bit more comparable in scale. I don't know.
I would say with Creed, one of the things that I learned is making that is like in action set pieces, you have to have a very clear story, and the set pieces have to say something about the character. I think it was Stallone who told me, he was like, look, man, action movies are different from musicals. Like if you watch a musical, when emotions get too heightened, characters burst out in a song, and like in the best musicals, you enjoy the song, but the story is moving forward during that song. Whether or not the characters fall in love, you know what I mean, or whether or not the characters break up. Like something at the start of that song, it was one way, and at the end of it, things were different. Right. So in the action film, it's kind of got to be the same thing going on, and characters should be being revealed. So I tried to keep that in mind with Panther, but that was something that I learned and practiced on Creed.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Maybe we'll mix it up. Another question from the audience here. Maybe up here in the front.
Thanks. Thank you for sharing your beautiful gift. I have a question. I'm wondering, in our really heightened, troubled political times, do you think the role of the superhero has an increased relevance and maybe a heightened therapeutic benefit to societies during these really polarizing times?
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I wish I had the answer to that. I wish I had the answer to that. Like, I think it's always hard to comment on. I think it's hard to comment on what the role of things are in the climate as it's happening. You know, it's easier to kind of look back and reflect. You know, because right now we don't know where things are going. You know, and they seem to move. They seem to move fast. You know, so yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, but I do look back on times that were considered to be like politically fraught. You know, and it tends to be like a lot of good art that comes during those times. You know, I think about the filmmaking of the '70s. You know, and I think about, you know, the Black Panther comic book itself was started in the late '60s. You know, so you think about those times and the art that comes out of those times when there's a lot of conflict, and it tends to be good. But it's hard for me to say, you know, what the role of superheroes are playing in today's climate.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's the role that art plays, and this movie seems to be part of a bit of an artistic tradition, that I think I read an interview that you mentioned a little bit of Afrofuturism, that idea of thinking about tradition and technology in the future and just imagining another reality than what's in front of us. I wonder if you could talk a bit about that kind of that background a bit to it.
Well, Afrofuturism.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, I think that I can talk about it in the context of you know, Afrofuturism is a genre, and it's almost a concept. You know, and you know, the more you read about it, the more you're just like, man, you need a PhD in this just to understand it. Yeah, like you know, so it's almost a field that people should go check out. Like for us, in our film, what we really wanted to try to do, which is a element of Afrofuturism, is to figure out how to make things high tech without losing the cultural, you know, significance and the cultural specificity. You know, because so often in futuristic storytelling, that stuff is lost. You know what I mean? You get an environment that's very clean and very absent of any cultural specificity, absent of any reminders of the past. And for us, with making this, we wanted to make sure that Wakanda felt like an advanced city, an advanced country, but still a very distinctly African country. Yeah. You know, and that Wakanda's are people who don't throw away things if there's no reason to. You know, like you still see, you know, in the city that we built, the Golden City, you still see, you know, really, really, really old structures that have been retrofitted so that they can still be used, but they're not knocked down and replaced. You know, so that kind of concept was one that we were very keen on.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that I find kind of beautiful about the film, is that you have different things that are really powerful in the movie. Like there's technology that's powerful. It's you know, being Black Panther is powerful, but also there's just the power of the ancestry and that spirituality. And it is kind of rare to have those on the same level in a film.
Yeah, and then the power of traditions.
And traditions,
you know, and ritual. You know, ritual is another thing. Like, you know, the act of doing something that your ancestors did, you know, doing it in the same place as them, and, you know, it's value in that stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, another question from our Twitter friends. Oh, this is good. This is about the music. Cameron asks, I know you worked with composer Ludwig Göransson since you guys were in film school at USC. And with this film, given the rich and diverse African culture, what tips did you give him on writing a score with the right mix of orchestral, hip-hop, and African elements?
Yeah. He's asking, who's that?
That's Cameron.
Cameron's asking about my good friend Ludwig, who's my friend and collaborator. We met in film school when I was first moved to Los Angeles for school, and he had just came to the States from Sweden. And it was funny because I remember when we were first talking, and he went to a music school in Sweden, and a part of his program in school was he had to go to Gambia and live with some musicians there and learn how to play a specific drum. And this was like in 2008 when I first met him. I thought that was odd that this Swedish dude had spent several months in Gambia, you know. But I never knew we would be working on this together. You know, but yeah, like with Ludwig, I don't give Ludwig tips on music. You know, he's very, very very, very sharp musically, almost unnervingly so. You know what I mean? But I think because he's so sharp, like as soon as he learned that he was going to be doing this film, you know, he and his wife, she was his fiance at the time. You know, they just moved to Senegal. You know, it was just like hey, we making this movie, and it was like boom, he was in Senegal before I knew it, and staying with the Gree out there named Baba Mal, and just and kind of like took the script out there to Baba Mal, and Baba was bringing musicians through his house in Senegal. They set up a recording studio there, and he was just studying and working, there with his girl, Serena McKinney, who's also a concert violinist. They were just living there, and in preparation for the film, recording things for the film. They recorded a few things that made it into the final score, and then when he came back, and it was time to lay things down, it was just a lot of experimentation,
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a great kind of alternation between these kind of more traditional trumpet fanfares and then the different types of percussion and all throughout. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot in there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, I think we have. Oops, sorry, just bear with me while I get these things out here. All right. Okay, this is about the cinematographer, which you talked a bit about, Rachel Morrison. Scotty asks, could you speak about your partnership with Oscar-nominated Rachel Morrison on developing a specific visual style for this film, and maybe what sources you were pulling from to inspire that?
Yeah. Rachel's also a friend of mine. I've known her since 2012. We worked together on Fruitville first, and she was having her son when we were doing Creed, so we couldn't work together then. I got an opportunity to work with Maurice Alberti, who was amazing on that film, and Rachel was available for Panther, so we were able to work together again. Rachel was really, really sharp. Not dissimilar to Ludwig. When it comes to filmmaking and cinematography, we don't talk. We both love technical stuff, like when it comes to cameras and lenses and lighting, but we don't tend to talk technical. When I really think about it, it's really more story based, more what we want the audience to feel, and how and where we want distinctions at. You know what I mean? Like do we want Wakanda's light to feel different from other locations? And we will pull a lot of images. The films we watched the most were these documentaries. We watched like Baraka, Samsara, we watched like a lot of Planet Earth.
That's great.
And I was like just to kind of feel like you were transported, but still on Earth. You know what I mean? Like we never wanted Wakanda to feel like it was in space or in another dimension or something like that. But if you watch Baraka, sometimes you'll feel like you transported to another place totally. Even though this is a place that you could buy a ticket and find on a map somewhere. Yeah. So we watched a lot of that kind of stuff. And when it came to the interpersonal relationships, we would go back to a lot of our favorite films. We go back to A Prophet. We went to a lot of crime cinema of the '70s because there was a secrecy to Wakanda that we wanted to kind of come through. It's a place that you can't talk about out in the open. So we kind of thought of Wakanda as kind of like a shadow organization or a crime family, in those ways. So we watched a lot of '70s, in a lot of '70s crime cinema. We watched Coppola's stuff that he did with
The Godfather.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I know, and that's really interesting about Baraka, because the colors in this film, it's just like that just kind of richness, that this whole panorama effect you get. So unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time here, so we're going to have to wrap up a bit. I'm just going to just remind the audience here that you can subscribe to Film Comment and read all about this. There's issues out there about Black Panther. And we also had an interview, actually, with Rachel Morrison. She said something wonderful, that it was kind of like working with a lot of different people from independent film, actually, among the crew there. And so, yeah. Subscribe to Film Comment podcast, magazine, email, newsletter, digital subscription, the whole lot. But enough of my plugging. Thank you so much, Ryan. This has been wonderful, and thank you all.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Josh.